Dreamer, written and narrated by Bogo. Episode 3. I like to imagine joy. Pure, exhilarating joy is what my mother experienced when she arrived at JFK Airport in New York. That she stepped outside, inhaled deeply, shut her eyes and threw her arms out wide, proclaiming, "Finally." In reality, the picture my mother paints bleeds with deep pain and resentment for everyone who failed her in those early years. In fact, she almost never talks about her arrival, like it's some insignificant beginning to her story. Instead, she would usually begin with another narration of the betrayal by Auntie Patrice. Auntie Patrice was my mother's cousin, but they were more like sisters. They were born in the same village, went to the same elementary and high school. Although they went to separate universities, that did not deter their friendship. Auntie Patrice moved to America after marrying her university sweetheart. You see, her husband won the American visa lottery, and by right of being the wife of a winner, she also won. In the context of a dream migration, the lottery gave Patrice unfettered access to the American dream. It was only right that she would share this accomplishment with her friend, describing the endless opportunities America now gave her access to. When my mother couldn't pay my school fees, Auntie Patrice reminded my mother that schools were free for children in America. The day my father broke my mother's nose, Auntie Patrice yelled at my mother for taking it, because in America, such nonsense wouldn't be allowed. When my mother reported her abuse to the police and she was told to forgive my father and understand that men sometimes make mistakes, Auntie Patrice scowled. She explained to my mother that it was absurd that she didn't take the name of the police officer and ensured his dismissal, because in America, that cop would be fired, she said. That was Patrice, the painter of my mother's America. Her technique was colorful, flowery, and finished with lots and lots of glitter. Nothing about the structures, the laws, the system, and implementation of said systems. Everything my mother knew about the country, she saw it through her eyes. She would often tell my mother, "Anything is better than living in Nigeria, my sister." My mother didn't need much convincing. She was desperate for a better life. So when Patrice pitched a way my mother could emigrate quickly, she was completely receptive. Without questions, my mother came up with the money requested by her friend, traveled out, and was promptly deported. That should have served as a warning for the dire consequences imminent, but it didn't. The second time around, my mother arrived as a pregnant woman on a tourist visa with no intentions of returning. A path that was quite the opposite of Auntie Patrice's access. On a visitor's visa, you are meant to be just that, a visitor, and most importantly, leave. My mother's rationale was, if she could break this one rule to ensure her survival, but obey everything else, she too could eventually thrive like Auntie Patrice. After all, anything is better than living in Nigeria. My mother soon realized that the beauty she so admired in the American system was designed to keep people like her out of it. She couldn't get an ID due to her immigration status, and by extension, couldn't get a social security number. Those two documents excluded her from participating in everything else legally. From working to driving to medical checkups, and definitely no benefits. Regardless, my mother was desperate to start earning some wages as she had me to care for. In defiance of his wife, Auntie Patrice's husband found my mother an under-the-table job due to her immigration limitation. With under-the-table jobs, there is often an undiscussed agreement that the employer pays you in cash, doesn't ask you for the relevant documentations like an ID or social security number, and in return, the employer gets to pay the employee a marked down wage. Now, this is where the issues began. When my mother was getting ready to come to America, Auntie Patrice thought it was a no-brainer that my mother would leave with her when she arrived. But no-brainer or not, my mother took it as an absolute kindness. To repay that kindness, my mother cooked, cleaned, and cared for her 3 children. My mother began her night job of cleaning a restaurant for just $8 an hour. The restaurant was so big it would take her about 4 hours to finish. Her commute time to the place was about an hour 30 minutes by train, so it took her all night. Patrice was not pleased my mother had less time to perform all the labor she previously did. She would complain about less food in the house, the cleaning not done thoroughly, my mother sleeping after getting home from work, and even got irritated when my mother expressed concerns about leaving me in Nigeria. Patrice was adamant that my mother needed to pay her dues. Whatever that meant, my mother was not having it. My mother reminded her that she was not her maid and did not appreciate being treated as one. Patrice eventually asked for rent, I suspect in spite. At that time, my mother realized that if she stopped the domestic labor she did for Patrice altogether, she would have more time to earn the rent requested, and she did just that. Auntie Patrice became furious. God will punish that woman. For what she did to me afterward, God will punish Patrice, my mother would curse off bitterly. This would usually signify the end of the story. But really, this was just another beginning she avoided. This beginning she did not treat like some insignificant part of her story. This bore the weight of the trauma that she was unwilling to untangle. 4 months later, my mother birthed my brother, who would remain the only legal immigrant in our family for 20 years.